Hello, it is February the 5th, 2022. This is As the World Burns. I'm your host, Randall Burns. Today's topic is the book Superforecasting. Now, I've included Superforecasting is one of the most important books I've read the last 2 or 3 years. And it provided substantial inspiration for this YouTube channel. I've included links to a couple of good reviews, the Wikipedia article and the Goodreads review, which will give you a more conventional book review. What I want to talk about is the lens through which I see the book Superforecasting and how I see its applicability. One of my viewers asked me for a tutorial on Metaculus. Now, I would suggest that Superforecasting provides you with a theoretical tutorial of Metaculus. It explains how the pieces fit together, not how to use the site, a little bit on how to make predictions in a practical sense, but not the mechanics of using the site, but the theoretical basis behind them. Now, this review is going to also focus on my lens through which I read the book Superforecasting. The premise of New Thought-inspired books like The Science of Getting Rich and Think and Grow Rich, which I've already covered Think and Grow Rich in a previous video, is that how we think about things influences our situation profoundly. Superforecasting is largely about how we think about the future. The main focus on Superforecasting is providing tools to develop predictive accuracy in your thinking and how you view the world. There's quite a bit out there on how to integrate that into personal. The thing that's left out of this of Superforecasting is how to integrate that into personal financial development and the attainment of personal happiness, or retainment of personal happiness as you develop it. And that's something they did not really go into. Many of the concepts in Superforecasting will be pretty familiar to people who've had a good statistics course. What won't be as familiar is how it applies on a practical basis in simpler situations where you're not necessarily developing detailed algorithms and writing an academic paper, but you're simply trying to make a basic heuristic judgment about something. And that's where Superforecasting really does go into some depth in a very positive way. Now, the authors point out that having a positive view of the future is an important key to personal happiness. But they don't really go into how you do that as you improve your forecasting ability. And that's, I think, something for a future video and some other books that I will cover later on on this channel. I think that one of the better ones on both of these is what Ben Graham developed in The Intelligent Investor. You want to attain the state of, I don't know what's going to happen and I don't really care. I'm set either way. Now, my own interest in forecasting was developed living in the Bible Belt. I saw people in that area being taken seriously for a ride by people that claimed falsely to have gifts of prophecy. And there was quite a bit of that in different ways. I mean, it's something that's happened over the years. There have been well-developed cases, well-known cases like where people sold all their property because they thought the second coming of Jesus is happening any moment now, so might as well enjoy things till he comes. And this often did not work out as folks maybe had hoped or expected. Um, and the thing about super forecasting is it develops an understanding of how you really measure predictive accuracy. You just can't just do it by just an intuitive sense of, yeah, it sounds right, it must be good. It doesn't work that way, at least not at any degree of sophistication and at any scaling of a community. You have to go beyond that. They detail, for example, the way that predictive ability of meteorologists is evaluated, and that's been incorporated into the site Metaculus. Now, there are some theoretical problems with that, as been pointed out to me by a former coworker, but this is what we have now, and this is what we're able to actually implement in real sites. Okay, there is a prize called the Hutter Prize that I will link to below. The theoretical basis of that is that compression ability is the ultimate measure of understanding a problem, including predictive ability. That has not been implemented in an actual forecasting site yet. Some of the points that I think that have been left out of previous reviews. Major news sources do not have much in the way of predictive accuracy, and they're taken far more seriously than they really ought to be. Now, we really have moved beyond the yellow journalism of the 19th century. Contemporary major news sources rarely out and out misrepresent facts, with the exception of stuff like the National Enquirer, that take it to the edge. Now, Fox News, I would argue, is taking it to the edge also. That's a whole nother discussion. But for the most part, the mainstream media is accurate about facts. They are not accurate in their speculation of the future. That's demonstrable. That's where a lot of the bodies are buried, and that needs to be better understood on a wider basis. Another very important observation, especially in a time that is divided as we are now, there's actually very little ideological correlation to predictive ability. What this suggests is that many movements and organizations are actively ignoring those among their ranks with real predictive skills. And it also would imply that to the extent that there are blind spots, they're in different areas among different ideological bents. And that's something that I haven't seen good measures on yet, and I'd really like to see. I think that would add a lot to the contemporary dialogue if that was done. I've read that the margin of balance between good professional stock traders and those that fail as stock traders is very slim. Super forecasting is about giving you that slim edge. It's not going to give you the secrets to the universe. It's going to help you use what you have just a little bit more effectively, but give you an edge that can have real compounded benefits over the long run. And that's the way that the eye that you need to look at this with. Now, I will also say those skills in Metaculus may need to be developed with the wisdom to find the good in all real outcomes. As you have to balance this, or you may just make yourself kind of miserable. That's kind of like why people called economics the dismal science for a long time. And I don't think there really is a benefit in being dismal. You want to develop the view to see the good in all things, along with your wisdom to see your skills to see the outcome. They need to be balanced. One professor that taught me this was Arkadiusz Kahan. He spent time in a Soviet re-education camp. He was actually a war hero fighting in a communist resistance unit during World War II, inside of what was at the time was considered Germany, under the gentle tutelage of the Gestapo, and committing acts of sabotage using forged papers. And he was welcomed with his efforts with a trip to Treblinka, which was a death camp that had been repurposed as a re-education camp. And one of the things I remember, you wouldn't think you could see the positive side of this, but he did somehow. he would talk about the respect that the guards treated him with. That they knew I wasn't a criminal. A lot of the other people there were. There wasn't just a re-education camp. They had a lot of really hardcore criminals were there too that really needed like the maximum security they had. But he said, the guards treated me with real respect. He somehow focused on the good parts. And it wasn't like he was whitewashing the torture and the anything else. He would talk about that, but he would focus on the guards treated me with respect. And that may be the kind of wisdom that you really need to use these skills optimally, to be able to find good in all things. Now, I have some future As the World Burns episodes planned. Comments on your priorities and what you'd like to see are certainly welcome. I want to do a more hands-on Metaculus tutorial at some point. I also want to talk a bit about the directions that I would like to see Metaculus moving and future Metaculus and future prediction-oriented sites. I have some ideas on that I just would like to go over with some people and get some feedback on. The one book that I could probably do an overview fairly soon on, but deserves a lot more detail, is Wallace Wattles' The Science of Getting Rich, which is a New Thought classic and has been a very influential book in a lot of dimensions. The prosperity gospel is arguably something that is a second or third generation imitation of The Science of Getting Rich. The Luck Factor by Richard Wiseman, which systematizes a lot of the work in The Science of Getting Rich and even parts of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which again is an imitation of Wattles. How Nations Rise and Fall by Ray Dalio. That's a very recently published book that I highly recommend. I may be doing an episode on Ukraine by the numbers. There are a number of predictive questions on Metaculus that cover the Ukraine situation. I know that's something of interest to a lot of people right now. The ferreting out disinformation, how we can use these prediction sites to identify mass disinformation. And this is in part something that I might cover in the directions for Metaculus, but it may deserve its own episode also. And I think that some of these techniques will point at how we can establish when disinformation is present. When we have situations now where we're having people saying, "You're the sheep," no, you're the sheep. And how do you really determine this in a fair and reasonable way? And that's something I think that is necessary to kind of wind down the religious warfare and the negative discourse that's going on. Feel free to mention which of these is highest priority for you. I do want this channel to be something that you are part of. And I'd also like to know if there's topics that people might want to do a Zoom call on at some point related to this channel. I don't know if we have quite enough interest for that yet, but if there is interest, I would like to identify it and move in that direction down the road. So this is Randall Burns, As the World Burns, signing off for today. Thank you for being here. Please do hit the like buttons. That really does make my day when I see a like. I'm not getting a lot of viewership yet. I want to change that, but those likes give me some possibility of that happening, and that's what it's going to take for this channel to take off. The proceeds of this are devoted to the care and education of my progeny, and that's what it's earmarked for. I'm doing this as a volunteer effort, and I want to see how far I can take it. Thank you much for listening. Look forward to seeing you again soon.